What's up? You guys are so excited to talk. I love it. That's what being part of a club is about. All right. Well, again, it's been about a year and a half since I shared about Meshtastic in the club. I got a little bit excited about Meshtastic, MeshCore again here recently when I'll say here someone came through N7JMV from Puget Sound Mesh and reached out to the club and proposed, hey, could they use our repeater set up on the rooftop in Everett to set up one of their devices. And so I was intrigued because Puget Mesh, again, it's a great resource if you're in the Puget Sound or even probably outside. There is a Discord as well that I started to look up, and it sounds like there's 600 members of their Discord app that have photos of some of these repeaters and a lot of information out there. But came to us and said MeshCore, and I'm like, well, why are they doing MeshCore in this case versus Meshtastic? And I know they have repeaters set up for both. But so it started to get me thinking. I'm like, gosh, I wonder what's going on with this MeshCore thing, because when we talked in May of 2024, there was no such thing as MeshCore. It was Meshtastic. And so I've been playing with it the last couple weeks, and I want to share some learning. So what I want to do today is share some things I've learned. There's some experiences the last year and a half with Meshtastic. At the time when I joined, there was just a couple people in the Puget Sound when I would look up and see nodes. Now I know there's probably close to 10 people in our club that have devices or have them set up or repeaters. I know, yeah, I didn't realize you had one too, Matthew, right? So he brought up his device to show as well. So I know, anyway, so a couple folks in our club have repeaters set up for Meshtastic. And a lot of devices. It's been something that's really grown dramatically, I'll say, and I'll cover that in a minute. So my setup, I guess before I go into too much detail, is I did refresh my software on my devices last fall, and I updated the Meshtastic software. And I have a mobile rig that I'll show pictures later in the presentation, but I have a mobile rig in my RAV4, a magnetic antenna. I'll show the picture of my antenna I'm using. And then I've got a rack wireless in this one here, actually. This device is usually in my vehicle. I take this antenna off and plug it in my back, plug it in the USB port, and set it up to the external antenna in my vehicle. And it just recharges as I go back and forth to work, and it keeps it charged 100%. And even if there's no charge, the battery on this with the rack wireless board is really efficient. It'll last a week and a half, even if I'm not powering it. So pretty efficient, but I've kind of got it set up where I do have this set up for Meshtastic right now in my vehicle and then connected to my phone. I also have a setup at my home that really hasn't changed, but I've got a 32-inch antenna stuck to a little rack wireless with a 10,000 milliampere battery, and that milliampere will last between a month and a half to 2 months without charging it. And it was running Meshtastic the whole last year and a half. I switched over to MeshCore just to learn about that, and so I think it will last even longer, like 2 months on a MeshCore repeater. So a 10,000 milliampere battery, a little rack device for $35. The antenna, I spent more on that just to try and make it work, and I'll show those pictures a little bit later. But that's been my setup. Again, I've gotten some devices throughout the year. I played with new cases. This is a root case for my Heltic board. I got a couple of these devices. You can see it's melted a little bit in the heat. So 3D printed stuff doesn't always work, but I did like these cases. There's one of the cases here that I got for this device. We've got a couple of the T-Beam Supremes, or T-Beams. I'm trying to think of the couple devices up here. I've had this one for a while. Couple rack devices. So this is a rack wireless. So when we talk Meshtastic, I've got a battery, I've got the little board, a Bluetooth, and antenna. Yeah?
Anyone testing that was in the club meeting here? Yes.
Perfect. Sorry. And I'll plan to post this online for the new, if folks want to watch this. So this is an example of just a base device without a case. And what I'm not going to go over today is, again, in the last presentation, I talked about what is Meshtastic, what's it about, all those kinds of things. I'm not going to go over that today. You're sure welcome to watch the video or look online. But it's really a way to hook up a device, a radio device like this, to your phone through an app on your phone, be able to basically text a message in like a calling channel for a ham radio type folks, like a 2-meter simplex. Hey, who's out there? Like an open channel. Or you can set up encrypted channels for your family or your community or your club or anything like that. So there's all kinds of things that go through that. So let me walk through the presentation. Again, I started looking at this more and got amped up as for a few different things. One of them was Juan asking about that and wanting to learn about MeshCore. It was interesting to see some of the information in the news as I'm starting to get out. So this was a few months ago, but in Florida, one of the Gulf Coast news stations interviewed a guy for 3-4 minutes and had a great little clip on 3 emergencies and how in Florida they're setting up these devices around the area. And it allows that when the phones go out, internet goes out, it allows people to stay connected. You'd be able to see, as he says, hey, where's the gas, or where's the gas station? Where's the things that I need to know about in my community? And so that's where that open channel or open things, you can see all the different people for us in the Puget Sound and see a lot of the text and things going through to see what's going on. So that was interesting to see it on the news. And then last night, it was interesting to see this. There was an interview, Ryan Montgomery, I didn't really know who he is, but the Shawy Ryan show, it was interesting to see this come up. There's this hacker who basically tells Sean, have you heard about Meshtastic? It's super cool.
Have you heard of Meshtastic?
No.
So it's super cool.
This guy's a hacker. It's like a 5-hour interview. He's a white hat hacker or whatever, tries to save kids, and I don't know the whole story. But it was interesting how on a podcast, the last time this guy was on the podcast, it had over 10 million views. So it's not a Meshtastic ham radio channel, for Shawy Ryan, I guess his name is. But it was interesting to have a hacker as part of his 5-hour interview he just did podcast talk about how cool he thought Meshtastic was as a device for if phones go out or just as a way to stay communicating. So that was interesting. Saw that last night. So some of the learnings that I've seen, and I wanted to highlight a few of these with Meshtastic, and then we'll talk into some of the things I've learned with MeshCore. The growth of the network, like I said, last May, I saw a few nodes, May 24. There's a few nodes, and you'd see I saw things start to grow pretty quickly. I think Ham Radio Crash Course had the second video that he had done, or probably that got us or reinvigorated, I guess, probably the mode or option. And so we saw that spring quite a few different nodes pop up and growth. And last time I checked for my home repeater, there's about 600 nodes around the Puget Sound that I was connected to through my home repeater through Meshtastic. So there's definitely a lot. And a shout out to the Pacific Northwest, because besides the UK, if you research Meshtastic at all, a lot of it's UK, where they really have taken ownership in it. Puget Sound is really the second place, it feels like, where with Puget Mesh and different organizations, when you look at the maps, we've got a lot of nodes and a lot going on in the Northwest. So shout out there. A reminder to update your software. So last fall, I saw someone send a message that say, hey, Meshtastic version 2.5 firmware has been out for a while. Please update your nodes and keep it refreshed. I said, sounds great. I do need to do that. So I did that last fall over break. So just a reminder to keep updating your software on your devices. In this case, it was an encryption update. When you're sending messages back and forth, they improved the encryption. Other improvements that have been made to software is how it routes messaging through the network. So if you've got an old device for Meshtastic or MeshCore and it's not updated, it might affect the way the network works, and it's got to work around an old Meshtastic software as an example, especially as I'm expecting Meshtastic to keep improving, both MeshCore and Meshtastic. So watch that. Message issues, now this is just me playing with it. I think probably if anyone that's done Meshtastic at all, you would love if it was 100% reliable, that you send a message to whoever you really want to contact in your family, and it worked. For those who have Meshtastic devices, does that work consistently? I see laughing and no, right? So it doesn't, and that's not just me. So I think that consistency and reliability, it's really cool to see all the nodes you're reaching all over the Puget Sound. It's cool to see the chat and get all the stuff going on, but when I would try and do direct message, I was just struggling sometimes at time with my Meshtastic devices, setting up channels, doing encryption. So I'd have to reset my nodes. There's probably a couple of different things I'd have to do at times to try and make sure my devices could talk to each other. So there was some, I'd say, growing things and just me learning and how to make sure that the devices were able to message each other. New devices, I'll show a bunch of pictures. There's a ton of new devices out there from what I showed a year and a half ago. And we've got a couple of them laid out here. And then this whole MeshCore network thing that started in, I believe, February of 2025. So it's very new. It's grown a lot as a device network. One thing, and this is just me being a noob, you can have both apps running on your phone. And so on this phone, I do have both Meshtastic and MeshCore set up. My Bluetooth links to both of them. I do have my Meshtastic device and my MeshCore device. And so I can be tracking both networks and have them set up. And I'm planning to keep on running both networks and learning as we go. All right, one of the things that was fun to do is summits on the air. I wanted to be able to do a summit to summit using a Meshtastic device. So at the camp out last summer in Oregon, a couple folks from the area, Clint and Chris, it was exciting to get a summit to summit with them. So I set up a device in ham mode, made sure it was simplex to make it clear for hams, where it was just device to device. We weren't going through repeater, a larger mesh, and which is called 0 hops. And it was just under 30 miles where he was on a summit, Mount Bailey. I forget the summit that I was on the map that you can see up there, but almost 30-mile contact from these little different devices, summit to summit, was pretty darn cool. I did realize that I was using this device or similar to this with this antenna. It is a very popular antenna that you can bend and use. And so I was using this in my backpack, but this point here broke on me in my backpack. So at least for portable use, I've shifted to a MuziWorks, and you can see it on actually you've got the same antenna too, more of a flexible antenna. So it's in my pack, it doesn't break off. So that was some of the things I learned there, but pretty awesome to be able to use the device and make a 915 megahertz contact summit to summit with another ham operator. Meshtastic, so there's different maps out there. This is one that I chose where you can see the growth or the current nodes and different devices that are out there. So again, this is, I'm sure, not capturing everyone, but this shows the magnitude around the world of where Meshtastic devices are being used. So definitely grown a lot. Talked about new devices, and this is where as I was researching, I'm like, oh my goodness, there's so many cool things. So Rack Wireless came out with a WisMesh Pocket 2, and I had something similar, a rack that I built this probably for $90 with the case, the device, the antenna, the battery, and everything, probably $80, $90. That Rack Wireless WisMesh comes out of the box for about $85 or $90. But it also includes a GPS module with it, and it's just all done for you, and it's got a screen. So it's just, if you're looking for one, that's one of the items that's probably one that would be on my recommended list because it's using the Rack Wireless board. It's been really efficient, and it's just all there. It's got an on and off switch, which mine does not have an on and off switch on my device, so it's just always on. There's all kinds of options. I'm not going to go through all of them. I don't know all these, but there's a Wio Tracker L1 Pro that I saw. There's a ThinkNode M1 that looked kind of cool. There's all kinds of options on Etsy, so just one example. Atlavox, if I'm saying that right, came out with a cool device. So Rich now has two of these devices, but one that he assembled and one that he bought all in one. So it's got a switch. It's got little numbers on the side. It's a great heat resistant case. So this stands up, this black part stands up, more heat resistant. so it won't melt on me on a summit or sitting in my car, and a green. So I think you've probably had good luck, Rich. There you are, Rich, with that, and so much that you got a second one. I did order one of those cases, and the coolest thing about those cases is, as I am not a solderer, I don't know how to solder real well. I did make a couple of these devices where you're clipping wires and your batteries, and you're doing all that and soldering the little switches, and it probably didn't work real well. But with this case, on the top there, you just plug your device in, you plug your battery into the switch and plug that little device there into your battery. You don't have to solder at all, you just put your device together. So someone's at least thinking about cases. Alavox also, there's all kinds of routers that you can buy for your car or anything else. This is more of an expensive one, but looked pretty cool. Heltec V3 is what a lot of folks, it's one of the most common devices that Heltec came out with. They came out with the Heltec V4, which is in the top right. I bought 2 of them, and the main reason what got me hooked is more power. I'm like, oh, well, you know, more power. So it's supposedly more 4 times the power. It goes from 22 decibels to 28. Is what they're saying. So I think it roughly might be up to half a watt that you're putting out. So I'm testing that. Some of the software is not set up to be able to do that full power yet, at least as of a week ago. But I'm intrigued to use those devices. One of the SOTA folks I know, he's switched, or he's got some of the Heltec mesh nodes T114. So Heltec came out with a more efficient device like the rack wireless device over here that's just using a much more efficient chipset. So again, it'll last a whole lot longer. That's the one in the middle. And then you're hearing about tags, WisMeshTags. So that little device next to the phone is a whole unit, except you don't have an antenna. It's all just a little card, and it'll last, I don't know, 2 days or something like that on the battery charge. I'm tempted to get something like that for my wife. Or something where I want just something super easy that someone can have and plug in and just connect it to their phone, where it just makes it easy. But your antenna, your battery, everything is just in that little card. So I've seen people on the network with that. So there's just, I want to highlight, there's so many options, and there's all kinds of devices and people coming out, which has been pretty cool. And maybe before I forget, I'll just highlight a few. So Mike, I know you set up a repeater, and you can see my little box packaging here. But this is buying a box probably from Amazon.
Well, that is not a router, that's just in client mode.
Or in client mode for Meshtastic, yeah. That's right, thank you. So this, I'll talk about this a little bit, about the different modes, but basically set it up so it could be outside, a rack wireless device. You said maybe a 3 watt solar and about a 3,000 milliampere battery, it looks like, in there, and an Alfa 915 antenna. And he said this was out for last year, and in the Pacific Northwest, this was able to stay powered even with our winter and everything else with that small. So you can see how efficient it is. This probably did not have GPS on, or that would be different, but that's pretty awesome. So this is something I want to build and get up outside my house. And thank you, Mike, for bringing that in to show. So MeshCore. This is from their website. What is MeshCore? It's a multi-platform system for enabling secure text-based communications utilizing LoRa, long-range radio hardware. It can be used for off-grid communication, emergency response, disaster recovery, outdoor activities, tactical security, private security, and also sensor networks. And so again, it's like Meshtastic, but there's going to be some differences in how they are set up and how they do things. MeshCore map, you can see what really stood out is it's not as spread out across the world, but it is growing very quickly for starting in February. And you can see in the Pacific Northwest, and most of those are in Washington, almost 900 of these devices are set up. So when you look around the world, about 900 in the Northwest. There's spots of Europe and UK that are more, but it definitely is growing a lot. This is what it looks like in our current area. And so what we can see is, this is my phone right now, but you could see bunkhouse with something way south near Oregon that I've gotten a radio signal from, or someone sent a message from. Nodes in Olympia, Seattle, on up through north of Vancouver. So a wide range that when I look at my phone and what it's connecting to, or people are sending messages, I'm seeing stuff from all over the Puget Sound, which is pretty crazy. And so I've seen messages come through on the open channel from a lot of these areas, VC, Victoria, all the time. It's pretty crazy. Yeah.
When you get your messages, so is it just like a text message or directly, or is there a
Yeah.
signal or anything?
Yeah, so it just looks like a standard text on your phone. And so there's different channels, but I can scroll, and these are all the people on the open channel that are sending messages. And there's 20, 30, 40 messages, something at least, that come through every day or more on MeshCore and Meshtastic as well. So yeah, it operates just like a standard texting, except you're doing it through RF. MeshCore, so part of the things I'm learning as well is how they route. I'm not going to go real deep into some of this stuff, but MeshCore, the top, the top screen there is how Meshtastic will route messages from one client in green box to the client on the right. So if I'm trying to send a message to someone else out over here, it can go through a repeater, it can go through a client, it can go through pretty much anything. And so with MeshCore, it's really about repeaters, and it's a very specific function in Node. So I do have it set up as a repeater because they're the ones that send out and repeat the signal. The clients don't really pass messages like they do in Meshtastic. So that's the main thing to highlight as a difference. Whereas you see with MeshCore, it goes from a client to a repeater, repeater, repeater to client. And then I think I highlight this in a few of the different tools, but I can look at a map and say, I want my message to go from this repeater to this repeater to this repeater to this repeater to this client. So there's a lot of control in how you can send messages, which is pretty darn cool. How many hops? If you know Meshtastic, you can do 3 hops is recommended, because when you send that out, it floods your messages to all the other devices. They recommend 3, you can do up to 7. MeshCore, there's no limit to the number of hops it can do. It's not limited to 7, which is kind of interesting, and I don't know the theoretical limit or what they ultimately limit it to. But it's a much more efficient use of the network, and so they can send further distances or more hops. So kind of an interesting way in how that's set up.
James?
Yeah.
So basically, Meshtastic, you can't control where you want the message, so it just floods it.
Yes, exactly.
So when it floods it like that, and it gets to its intended destination, is it like the first one that gets it, and everything else it drops off?
No, all of them, all the clients within reception would basically get that and rebroadcast it as well. And it does that normally up to 3 times, or it can be 7.
But MeshCore,
it just yeah, default would be just primarily through the repeaters, or like I said, you can control, and it can sometimes tell if there's I think a certain path. Anyway, it's a little interesting in how it routes. Now, Meshtastic, I don't fully understand it, but I know they're looking at different ways to make more efficient in their routing as well. So I think things are going to probably tweak a little bit as we go, but I think one thing people like is they seem to be getting messages through more efficiently or more consistently, and I'll walk through some of my experience with that. So this was interesting is narrowband versus wideband. So Meshtastic uses 250 kilohertz bandwidth, and the recommended for MeshCore right now is 62. So it's a lot narrower with MeshCore, which is interesting, but they say it works better. Now, my first thought was it's like CW and voice, where CW goes longer. Maybe my thought is too simplistic, but theoretically, I guess maybe that's not how it works, but it changes the noise level, or I don't know, something. But anyway, but it feels like it goes farther, and there's all kinds of studies, I'm sure. Flashing the software was really easy. I've had issues with Meshtastic at times where my devices, I'd have to figure out how to do it, or how to flash it, and usually it's pretty easy, but there's always some little button I had to remember how to push or do something unique. MeshCore, I just plug it in, and at least so far in my couple devices, it resets it, whatever it needs to do, it just does it. So that's been nice. Repeaters, like I said, I never had a repeater with Meshtastic because they all basically handled or worked the same, and so there's really no incentive that I saw to do that. And I think that's what most people did. In MeshCore, it is about repeaters because it's a device setup, and so they really section it off and say that's a repeater role. So I can't access it through Bluetooth. I have to access it through RF, which helps the battery power last longer. There is a reminder I'll show you there to sync your repeater clock. So there is a button to, when you set up your repeater, to sync the clock. And then there is an app fee. So the licensing is different between Meshtastic and MeshCore. I did pay $7 or $8 to not have to wait 10 seconds to be able to change my router or check the status of my repeater, I mean. So there's going to be some things there, but for what I was getting for the benefit and how it was working, I'm like, gosh, if it's $7, that's cool. But you can check your repeater without paying that. You just have to wait a few seconds.
Quick question again.
Yeah.
How does it, if it doesn't have Bluetooth, how is it communicating with your app? Is it through,
Through RF.
what's that?
Through the radio frequency, RF, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you can,
Yeah, that goes to the phone?
it's Bluetooth to this, and then this radio RF to that antenna over there, and it sets it that way. So
is that a client or is that another type of device?
what's different is, this is my client device, and like I said, these don't repeat messages in the same way. This over here in the styrofoam, that's set up as a repeater. And so that's repeaters in MeshCore. You can't use Bluetooth. It's a little harder. They're trying to make sure you know it's a repeater and just to differentiate between Meshtastic. So
It's same Heltec board, just
Same
set up
boards.
client or repeater.
yes, and that's a good, just to clarify, all these devices, you can set them up as either one, right? And you can go back and forth. It doesn't matter. So, yeah.
And they're line of sight.
Yes, yeah, so these, so all these are going to be line of sight, 915 megahertz band is going to be line of sight. But, so device to device, but where the power is you've got more of these devices spread out, they're going to talk to each other and be able to take you farther than line of sight, and that's where the power is. And then with people setting up repeaters up on Cougar Mountain, for example, or some of these others, it's giving a huge path around the Puget Sound for us to stay connected as well. So that's a few thoughts on the repeaters. There are really great apps. In the app, there's some great tools, so we'll go over a couple of those things. You can trace the path. So like I was mentioning, you can set up, and again, on the far right, there's trace path using map, antenna coverage, line of sight, RX log or receive log, and discover nearby nodes. This is where you can bring up to trace a path and say, I want my message to go from my repeater to this repeater, this repeater, this repeater, this repeater, to this repeater to get my brother in Issaquah, as an example. And so you can lay it out and say that's specific. I don't want it to flood all these other nodes, so it's a very efficient way in control. Again, as long as people have their solar nodes up and they're consistent, you might have to change it, but that's an interesting. There's, as hams, we see this in different software and tools, but the coverage of your antenna. So based on my location, kind of near the Walmart there, I can look up and click on my repeater and I can see where my signal is currently going. So I'm heading out, in general, this is saying out southwest and more to the north in my current pattern. And then line of sight is interesting, so I can choose between this repeater here and my repeater, and I can see what the distance is and line of sight and get a feel for between any two devices or points to see how you're set up. There's a discover node there where you can be at wherever you are, and you can say, hey, I want to discover repeaters around me, and it'll do a scan and list what repeaters are around you. So I've used that as well. And then in the repeater tools, again, I highlighted there in the middle right, but when you open up to set up your repeater or change settings, there's that sync clock in the middle, so remember to do that. When I was first checking my repeater, my messages were from 2024 sometime. And I looked around and saw a lot of the repeaters were still doing that, so reminder to update that. And then I can do neighbors. So on the neighbors tab, it's show your neighbors. It shows the 2 repeaters that I can connect to reliably, or that I can connect to the Cougar Mountain, which is crazy, but that's called my neighbor, and then the Haystack one. So again, those are 2 of the standout ones in the Northwest, and what my report is and that kind of stuff. So just some really kind of neat tools in there. On your repeater, you can set up an admin password. You can set up a guest password if you want people to log in and check basic stats of your repeater. You can do that as well. And before I guess I move on, I'll say there's another piece that I have not looked at too much, but there's store and forward as part of the Meshtastic, where if your device is not turned on, or the person you're trying to text their device is not turned on, there's a way to basically save the message so it gets to the person when they turn their device back on. MeshCore has something similar, but you have to basically set up another device. I think you can do a repeater and a device type, but you set up another device in my home. I'll probably have my repeater, another device is a room, and set it up so I can send a message to basically that room that'll store it, and then if my wife or kids or whatever open it up later, they can see if there's any messages. So that's kind of something I want to play with next, but wanted to mention. So this was a test that I did, and getting kind of towards the end here, but I was getting a feel for it of how is this MeshCore going to work? What's a standard day for me driving to work in the morning from Marysville to Everett. A great picture there of my home antenna. You can see my setup there with the rack wireless, the 10,000 milliamp hour battery, and the antenna. And so just in the second floor of my house. And then the right, a mobile antenna for my vehicle. So I drove to work. Let me find it here. So this is my little path. So on the very top right, kind of see roughly where I started. You can see the repeaters on the map around there. And the red dots are where I sent a message from my mobile and it was not received at the home whatsoever. The little green smiley faces are where the message went through to my home. So it was pretty cool to see nearly the entire way through Everett, the Boeing freeway there, around the plant, where I park, except where I actually park. That's the one red button there, but around the site there, really I was able to get about 90% of the messages between 1 to 11 miles reliable. And I don't remember being that consistent with Meshtastic. Now I'd love to test it again. I know there's been improvements, but I was pretty impressed with that. And one thing I liked about MeshCore, and I'm realizing it isn't really that reliable, but I liked it how it shows you when you're sending message. So when you type in a text and you press send, it'll tell attempt 1 of 3 sending or attempt 2 of 3 sending. So you can see that it's attempting. If it's not going through the normal way, a flood mode or a direct path, it will switch over to flood. So it helps make sure things go well. It'll tell you if it's delivered, which is really cool. But this is where I realized you can't trust that, at least right now. So maybe there's some ways that can improve. Because you can see all the items in red that say they were failed, nearly all of those I did receive at home. So again, interesting to kind of play with this a little bit more in the future, but just because it failed, it still may have gone through. And I saw that when I was testing with my son and driving around Marysville as well, as I was getting to him and even though it showed that it had failed. So 13 of the 22 received at home showed not delivered, but were received, which was pretty cool. I'm getting messages here, something's pinging at me, looks like, yeah. So how to start, last slide or two here. You need to get a device is step 1. Atlavox M1, just because that looks really cool, and for the price of 70, 80 bucks, it's an all-in-one. I know Rich, like I said, had one, but either an all-in-one device or anything. There's so many devices out there, you can start with anything. Flash the device, so either Meshtastic Flasher or MeshCore. You basically choose the device, you plug it into your computer, update the software, and then third step is really to go to your phone and get the phone app for that. And then to keep it really simple is you've got to log into your app and you've got to tell it what region you're in. So click the drop down for US, or on MeshCore there's a US recommended mode, which is that narrowband mode. And if you do those 3-4 steps, you're basically set up to start getting messages, and then you can learn and get down the path. So why all this stuff? Why are we talking about this as hams? And it's really fun to play with radio in new ways is one of the things I'm thinking through this. For the last year and a half, this is kind of what I've been learning about it. It's ultimately, I'd say my goal of, I still haven't solved it with ham radio and fully with mesh devices yet. My parents don't live that far away. They're 10 miles or so, 7 to 10 miles away from me. I've tried GMRS. There's a little bit of a hill between us. 50 watts, barely heard. I couldn't really kind of make it fully work with my parents. Ham radio, my parents aren't going to get their ham license. Mesh devices seems like just a simple way that I'd love to figure out a way with nodes and stuff to be able to reach out to my parents. I know with the storm we had, a year or two ago, my brother lost internet and phone and all that kind of stuff. And I think a few folks in our club have been in a similar situation. So I like the idea of it being a backup comm, but it's just kind of fun to learn about. It's low cost to start, and that's how they get you hooked. It's like your first time. First device is only $25. And I think I'm at least over 1,000, maybe I'm under 2. So it's from cases, I mean, you can, yeah, oh, that case is cool. And if you got, and then you got to buy a 3D printer at some point probably to print your own cases. So, but it is fun. Again, there's no license required. I think it's just one of those ways of how do we keep our family members or in an easy way connected, gauging interest at least and starting to think about how some of those things work, or if they don't care about it, at least a way that we can stay connected. And then it's fun to see a lot of the hams involved in this. So MeshCore, I looked through my list, and it does limit you at 350 contacts on MeshCore. So when I look in my contact list, and I will say the only way you can send a message to somebody is if they're in your contact list, but the contact list will limit it at 350 on MeshCore, and I'm at that on both my devices. So I've heard more than 350 devices. Meshtastic will do, like I said, I think I had up to 600. So that is one nuance. But of the 350, there are 28 hams that I saw that were involved. People that were involved in MeshCore, Meshtastic, a lot of them are hams. Puget Mesh, the people that started that or run that are hams and have a ham background. So there's a lot of us in the community that, as we set up these devices, strengthen the networks, we can be part of strengthening the network and having our call signs out there and being good representatives for our community. So wanted to share that today. Thanks for listening.
One quick question.
Yeah.
To get into the mesh, you only need that one device?
Yes. Yeah. So to get started, a device like this, and sometimes it'll just come in a little box without a battery. But yeah, a device like this. And again, for probably everything in between 50 and 90 bucks or so, we'll get you a full.
So you tie that to your phone
via Bluetooth.
or your computer.
Yes, but generally you're going to do it through your phone. You get a device like this, you download the app, and then you've got it talks via Bluetooth to your phone.
And that's
That's
a
all.
complete system right there.
Yes, this is a complete system.
Okay.
Whatever you just did, it blinked that little white box.
The little box, yeah, it's getting messages or, yeah.
Well, when you did whatever you with your thumb on your phone, I saw it go off.
Oh, did it? Yeah.
There you go.
So, and it's interesting because with Meshtastic, the one thing is these devices will constantly send out a message to the other network to let people know it's there. Meshtastic does that more often. MeshCore has set it up where you only do it on your own, or you basically click a button that says, I want to advertise my node to the network. I've got my repeater set up where it does it every maybe 4 to 6 hours. So that's one nuance in these devices. But yeah, any questions?
Interference? Have you had any interference between your MeshCore and Meshtastic devices?
I haven't noticed so far any interference between the two. It'll be something I'll watch. They are at a different frequency. slightly different frequency. Yeah. And sorry, I'll go to you next, and then Tim. Sorry, Tim. Yeah.
All right. So my buddy asked me about this about 6 months ago, and I said, "Oh yeah, Meshtastic, blah blah blah." This.
Yeah.
And he says, "I can't be bothered. I want a consumer product. I just pull out of the box and download an app, and it just works."
Yeah.
And I said, "I don't know if this is the right thing for you." Do you have a better answer than that?
Generally, I would say that's probably a decent answer, but things are getting easier. So I know, Rich, you just bought this device. I'll use Atlavox, and I think most of the devices will come flashed with Meshtastic. And I think he does the most current version when he's sending them out.
He also sets it up with a couple channels.
And he even sets it up for channels and stuff. So, I mean, that's something where, and again, there's other companies that do this as well, or they'll download it. And I think you can even tell them to load it with MeshCore. But there's different devices that are more all-in-one type things that you can buy, where you're not having to solder, put a case, or 3D print a case, that it's getting there where it's easy for someone that doesn't know anything just to basically buy the device, set up the app on their phone, and start using it. But there's still some things you're going to have to learn, and you really should be updating your device every couple months to keep it up to date. So that's where we're getting closer, but I don't know if we're perfectly there.
And there's even some devices that are all-in-one devices, meaning
Yes.
like Blueberry, remember the Blackberries,
Yeah.
where they actually have a keyboard on the device. You can answer and send text all from a single device.
Without needing a phone.
Without a phone.
You can pull the device, plug it in, and you're connecting up.
Yeah, of course, my buddy, he specifically wants that kind of functionality, but he wants something like a Go tenant that's just modern.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that the WisMeshTags are probably the most simple thing, I would think. But again, it's that whatever you get, even if it's something like this that's an all-in-one or a tag that's a lot easier, they should still at least probably learn how to update every couple months, or you can help them. Sorry, yeah.
When do you want to add a repeater to your ensemble?
Yeah, no, so I'd say for Meshtastic, you really don't need to, because everything's basically a repeater. It's all broadcasting the message. But MeshCore, I did specifically set one up at my house, or I've got two right now, but one at my house and then this test one, because I'd say it's where you don't have to have one, but because in MeshCore, it won't rebroadcast messages with this MeshCore device, I have to have a repeater to do that. So there's times like at my house, I'm going to have a device, like I did with Meshtastic, but I'm going to have a device set up that I don't check it. It's just got a bigger antenna, a longer battery. It's going to work like a repeater, like our club repeater. And I'll just let it stand there and be. And in MeshCore, it's kind of easier for it to just be there and do that. And then around my house, I'll just have these devices or MeshTags or whatever that are going to basically be getting messages from my home repeater and rebroadcasting it. So I'd say from a home and or getting things up in the air, you might, with MeshCore, you might want two devices and or Meshtastic if you want something outside up higher. As a repeater, and then around your house more as a client. Hopefully that helps, but I am realizing that I think the point is with MeshCore, I'm realizing I need to actually have, I'd like to have dedicated repeaters in certain situations. Like for my parents, when I set them up, I might get them set up with a repeater up higher in the house or outside in a little outdoor device set up, and then get them a tag or something in the house that they can set up that way. Yeah, good question. Yeah, Don.
So like D-Star and WiresX and all this other these companies that branch off and do their own thing like this, do you have any foresight, like as in which one you think is going to take off more than the other? It feels like Meshtastic got started first, so they have the population, but
it's a good question.
MeshCore is probably the better network.
Right now, I feel that way, yes. And it is a good question. Which one do you think is going to do better? I love the fact that MeshCore's been there and pushing the envelope and leading the way for a long time. They've been there about 5 years. MeshCore came out and said, let's kind of choose to do a few things differently, and lessons learned, we want to do things a little different. So I think it's going to make both networks better. Right now I'm leaning towards MeshCore because I'm having more consistency. I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to keep running them both, but I think when I set up my family now, my brother, I would set them right now at least up with MeshCore.
That's
Yeah.
my next
Well, that's the
question.
question I have is, they don't intermingle the message
No.
or anything?
No, these are, it's,
They're separate units,
so,
groups.
Meshtastic and MeshCore are different software that you're running on your devices and
But I mean,
different
if I
frequencies.
send a MeshCore message, it won't go through the mesh.
It will not go through Meshtastic.
Yeah.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Competing networks.
Yes, it's competing, yeah, you're exactly right.
Okay.
But I'm sure gateway is going to be in the future between the two.
Like we have hotspots that connect C4FM and all these stuff. That is, I mean, I heard someone from Puget Mesh, I think, talking about maybe at some point there's some sort of bridge and or connection. It might be interesting to see. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm blown away at how quickly MeshCore has grown. Yeah.
Do you know if MeshCore supports environmental sensors?
I believe they do, because you can search for sensors as one of the things as well. Yeah.
Yeah, for IoT
Yes. Yeah.
and things.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I think someone had set up a water sensor to measure the height of the water in a tower or something like that I had seen. So kind of interesting. Yeah.
So what was that first little one that you had? What was the name of it?
Yeah. So this one it's a Heltec board, which looks like that. That's a Heltec 4. And I bought a case, a separate case for it, and did some soldering and that kind of stuff. And I liked it because it had, not this one, but a little belt clip, like a Baofeng belt clip. So I could, so that's why I initially bought it. I didn't like that it melted in the heat though. So I do have 2 of those devices.
Is this presentation going to be on our website?
What I'm planning to do is post a video of this and share the links, and I'll kind of look and see. I think last time I sent out the PowerPoint and to the club.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone for staying and listening. I guess we went a little bit longer, but
Yeah, thank you, James.
thank you all. Awesome.